What is up, everybody? Happy Friday to you. That almost sounded like happy birthday to you. Happy Friday to you all. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, being goofy on a Friday afternoon. Hopefully you are all getting set in one form or fashion to have a great weekend ahead. And hopefully part of that weekend will include a Bengals win. They desperately need one, and they desperately need to start tipping the scales back in their favor in terms of the Battle of Ohio. That is who the Bengals face this weekend. Both teams struggling, combined 3 wins between them. We're going to break it all down here. I'm Anthony Cosenza. I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, John Sheeran, who is cruising through his Friday and into the weekend. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm kind of glad that you led with like the happy birthday tune, because you can't see his face. He's right here. He's just off camera, but he's in this picture behind me. He's one of my best friends growing up. His name is Ben. He's turning 30 tomorrow. I'm going to celebrate with him. So happy early birthday to Ben, one of the Bengals fans that I've known since birth.
Yeah, nice. Happy birthday, Ben. And he's got the BEN part of Bengals, right? So he's dialed in, man. So good for him. That's awesome. Happy birthday to him. And we've got a lot to get to today. There's some news and notes. We're going to go through the injury report, and then we are going to talk about keys to a win and all kinds of different stuff here on the Orange and Black Insider. And if you are new here, welcome. You can get this show if you like the audio side of things. You can get that through your favorite audio streamer, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the major ones on the Believe, BLEAV, in Cincy podcast channel. That channel has our show, 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin, as well as Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, and the coach and Willie talking ball. They know ball. Matt and Willie know ball with the coach, Matt Minnick, and Willie Lutz. All those shows on our channel, the Believe in Cincy podcast channel, BLEAV. You got to go resubscribe to that feed. And we've got a little announcement at the end of the show too, which is kind of cool. So we're happy to have that. I know our guys, Jim, have had some recent big guests. I think I saw they had David Fulcher on recently and a couple of others. So go check out some of those all of the shows. Check out all of the shows. I know 3 and Out just dropped an episode last night as well. So go check all of that out. And if you like the video side of things, you can get that through if you like the live stream deal, you can get that through a number of different platforms, be it the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, the Orange and Black Insider underneath John there's a show icon. Click that, and that'll lead you to our YouTube channel where you can subscribe. Click the bell and the thumbs up button. We appreciate that. And then, of course, we stream to Twitter as well. I know there's a lot of great shows. Thankfully, we have a lot of them on the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. I know there's a lot of great shows out there. We appreciate you tuning into ours and the others on the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. So thank you very much. All right, let's get to it. It seems as if there's a little bit more of a sentiment of let's take care of business, a sentiment of we've talked a lot of talk in the past. It's gone our way sometimes. It hasn't gone our way others. And so now one of the Bengals stars who is off to a great start, that being Jamar Chase, is deciding to kind of start to button things up, and not only just professionally, I guess he also meant a little bit like button the lips a little bit in terms of what's being said about other teams and talking some noise. It's hard to talk noise when you're 2-4, John.
Yeah, man. I mean, it started with Cam Taylor-Britt with the things that he said, before the Chiefs game and whatnot. And I think he kind of learned a lesson in humility there. It's not necessarily about like the things that you say, but more like how you say it and how it's interpreted by the opposing parties and whatnot. And obviously, anyone's going to try to run with anything that you say for like an extra ounce of motivation against you. And I feel like that was something that Cam Taylor-Britt learned. It's something that Jamar Chase learned last year, because if you remember, it was week 1 last year where the Bengals, I think, lost by like 24 or 21 points in the opener. And Jamar, was talking about like, oh, like the Browns are a bunch of elves because they have the elf like as their logo in the middle of the field. And it was just like a very lighthearted jab and whatnot. But the Browns are obviously the thorn in the side of the Bengals for the past handful of years. Really, it's ever since Jamar Chase has gotten there. He's like, it's been really tough for the Bengals. So I thought what he said on Thursday was very interesting, and how he just only credited the Browns defense, and particularly the secondary, which has always been great battles between him and Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome and company. And he kind of revealed like what happened last year and how it's kind of a different approach this time. He said, "quote When I did the elves thing last year, I think Cleveland did like a paper or something like that, and they put it in the paper in the locker room and just kind of ran with it, and how this year's approach in terms of trash talking has been just do it on the field. Like if you're going to say something, say it on the field. Do it after a big play. Don't give anyone any type of bulletin board material to really just run with you." And that was something that I think Zach Taylor also told him to do. He said, "quote Zach told me twice that you don't have to talk, you don't have to say so much." That's what he told me. "You don't have to say so much. Just keep the words at a minimum and let my play do the talking." And that's respectful, and I can understand that. And I think not only is that the case, but when you're definitely just trying to kind of even the scales in a very important game and a very important rivalry, it's all about winning, man. It's all about just taking care of business and letting the talk come after that. Because I think it was Paul Brown who said, "Winners or losers say nothing, winners say less." Maybe something. It was like the opposite of that. Maybe I don't want to just. I want to misquote.
Pretty sure that's correct. Yeah, pretty sure that's correct.
that was the sentiment behind it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the whole, there's all these cliches, act like you've been there before, and all of those types of things. Look, the trash talking and or good-natured ribbing of other teams it's all well and good when you're winning and you're a confident team and you're putting up a ton of wins, and or you are winning against a specific team frequently. And so let me back up one step further behind that. I don't think the elves comment was, I mean, I don't know. I just kind of felt like that. Yeah, I didn't think that was that offensive, but I mean, whatever. They took that as, they being the Browns, as some form of bulletin board material. So it is what it is. The Bengals haven't been beating the Browns with any sort of regularity. They haven't won in Cleveland since 2017. So, it kind of, it's a little reminiscent to me, the way things are going now. And not that things have ever been this boisterous in this generation of Bengals trash, players and trash talking and stuff. But it reminds me a little bit towards the end of the Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco type of stuff, where it was like, it was awesome, made the Bengals relevant. They were winning games, but they never won the big games. They weren't beating the Steelers. They weren't doing all this. So it just, that kind of got a little old. And then people kind of just started kind of either tuning it out or saying, this is ridiculous. You're talking noise and there's not a lot of backing it up. This iteration of the Bengals have done far more backing up in general, obviously getting to the Super Bowl, AFC Championship game, etc. But the fact of the matter is that they haven't been beating the Browns. They haven't been winning games this year. So I think it's kind of, let's not focus on so many things that the other team is doing. Let's focus on what we need to do and what we are and are not doing to this point.
And at least for Chase, it's working. I mean, he's producing like arguably the best receiver in the NFL. And, his approach, I think, to this year has been really phenomenal ever since he got his, and some type of closure, not closure, but like some assurance with his money, whatnot, without getting extended and everything like that. But yeah, it's hard to keep trash talking when the losses keep stacking up. And a team that talks that's 2-4 is typically not going to be taken very seriously. So, and that's something that I think they have to learn with the Chiefs as well. Like it's been almost now 2 years since they've actually beaten that team. And obviously it's going to be very intense no matter what happens before the game and whatnot. But I think there's an understanding there that, yeah, like it became a rivalry because, we being the Bengals kind of asserted ourselves and, beat them multiple times and made it the dynamic that it is. But, those wins have to continue to follow for our words to have any backing. So it's almost like it's kind of coming full circle where, the Bengals started off as the underdogs and then they kind of, had this resurgence and, just an uprising in the AFC. And then, they were kind of at the top and they were talking the talk. And now they're making their way back down and trying to get back up again. So it's kind of like a full circle moment, I think, for them mentally.
Yeah. And so Jamar Chase kind of buttoning it up. We'll see what that does. I mean, it could be something that it just kind of rechannels the focus in a different way. It could be something that has the Bengals. I don't know. Maybe it's just a reality check because they've been in a little bit of a free fall this year. I don't know, but I mean, at this point, you're 2-4, and changing things up from before or maybe what was not working for you at the beginning of the year is not necessarily a bad thing. And I know you mentioned Cam Taylor-Britt against the Chiefs. He also made Taylor-Britt did comments about Jaden Daniels in the Washington offense. Yeah, I mean, it was almost a a weekly thing with some of the same kind of usual suspects, so to speak. So I don't know. Do you think this is a good thing? Do you think or is it just, it is what it is and let's move on? I don't know.
I from my perspective, trash talk it's very harmless to me. Like, I feel like if you like, because obviously the people who are actually playing the games, like, they take it seriously and they use it as fuel to motivate themselves. From my perspective, it's just noise, and it's fun for me to kind of view it, and I think it adds more intrigue to the games and whatnot. But if the players take it far more seriously than the fans do, and let that kind of fuel them, obviously that's how Michael Jordan built his whole career, then yeah, maybe you shouldn't give people unnecessary fuel when you don't have to. But for me, it's pointless, and it's just fun, and it just adds like a very, in my opinion, meaningless element. But it clearly does have meaning because people tend to run with it.
Yeah, they run with it, and you get egg on your face if you don't back it up, right?
Yeah.
So let's move on to the injury report. The Bengals coming in again pretty healthy into this one. The Browns also, and we've got another segment talking specifically about someone on their injury report. But Bengals pretty healthy in this one, John. If you want to kind of run us through some things, I'll try and pull this up for us.
The Bengals are healthy. Sans, or not Sans, but there was a scare. I'm not going to lie. I think when people saw that Joe Burrow had another injury pop up, everyone kind of took shelter and wondered if he was wearing a sleeve over his leg. But Joe Burrow popped up on the injury report, not only with his wrist injury that's been consistent the entire year, but with a shin injury on Thursday. He was still a full participant on Thursday. He was a full participant on Friday. I think a lot of people went to bed wondering what the case was. But according to Zach Taylor, it's just soreness. And that could have just been from him running more often against the Giants, and maybe you just felt something, maybe something that happened on Wednesday or Thursday that he just kind of had some type of attention to. Again, an injury only pops up in the injury report if you get like official treatment from the team during practice or like right after practice, whatever the case may be. So I'm sure he just said, hey, like, my shin's a little sore. Can you guys take a look at it? He didn't miss any reps because if he did, he would have been like a limited participant on either Thursday or Friday. So he was full participant. He's going to be good to go for Sunday. Zach Taylor clear the air with that. The only player who's questionable is DJ Ivy, and he's not even on the active roster. He's still on the PUP list. They have another week and a half, I believe, to actually activate him to the roster, but he was a full participant for now 2 weeks straight. They have, I think, an open spot on the roster, so this could be the week where DJ Ivy comes up. You may not need a full stable of 6 cornerbacks against the Browns offense with one of the worst passing attacks in the league. Maybe you want to focus more of your resources on defending the run, but if DJ Ivy were to be activated this week, it would make sense considering how much he's practiced. And then DJ Turner, who's was limited the first 2 days, of this week with practice with an ankle injury, but he was full participant on Friday, so he'll be good to go for Sunday as well.
Yeah, and then interesting to see what happens with Ivy and what they do there. I know, they've pressed Jalen Davis into action there. So does he remain kind of the guy? Ivy was a really good special teams player last year. He did really well in the gunner deal. I think he was hurt in the Minnesota game, right? That was a bloodbath of a game in that one. I think the Reader was also gone in that one too, if I'm not mistaken. So that was late in the year. So I know he showed a lot, not only last preseason, but showed a lot on special teams. And it's one of those things, much like the guy who is topping the list of the other team's injury report. It's one of those things, first week back, first game back, how much do you expect? What's the workload, et cetera, et cetera. So as you look here at the Browns, of course, you've got Nick Chubb towards the top, and it is noted he will play. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. Grant Delpit is in concussion protocol, did get limited throughout Wednesday and Thursday. Jerome Ford, who's been picking up the slack, so to speak, for Chubb's absence, he has did not practice Wednesday or Thursday, rather. Deontay Foreman, the other running back there, limited practice. You got Myles Garrett limited with an Achilles injury. I think all systems are go for him, though, and a number of others that have full practice throughout, a little bit of limited for Denzel Ward as well down there. And this is via CincyJungle.com. So the Browns have a lot of guys listed on their injury report. Some will not be playing, some will be, but I think that's in part contributed to their 1-5 start, along with, quarterback play and all kinds of other issues.
Yeah, I mean, their offensive line is being really bombarded with injuries. Like Jack Conklin before this week was dealing with a lot. He was out for a couple of games. Ethan Pokic, who is, I believe, questionable at center. He didn't play against the Eagles. It was Michael Dunn, who was in there. He's typically the right guard. He's going to be at right guard if Pokic does play. You have Joel Bitonio, who's entering like year 11, so he's not as athletic and spry as he used to be. And Jedrick Wells, I think, has been dealing with some stuff as well. So it's kind of a banged up offensive line unit that is already kind of adjusting to life without the best offensive line coach in the game, and Bill Callahan. And that's a big story in this one because for as much as the Browns offense with Nick Chubb has gotten a lot of credit to steamrolling the Bengals, it's really just been fueled by that offensive line and how athletic they are. Like Wyatt Teller, he's been out for a little bit. He's not going to play in this game, and he's been really good at right guard in years past. And him and Bitonio have been a great combo there. But yeah, it's just not the same effective athletic offensive line as it used to be. It's still got some juice in it when it is healthy, but that is something that is just not been the same. And I think it's kind of led to the offensive sluggishness that we've seen, aside from obviously the quarterback play.
Yeah, it's all intertwined, right? I mean, there's no Chubb to rely on some things. The offensive line isn't what it has been, and then there's injuries elsewhere, and that is kind of a little bit of the story as to how the Browns have gotten to 1-5 right now. It's hard to tell here and we'll get to this here. It's hard to tell what type of status the Browns view their season right now. They just traded away one of their stars in Amari Cooper to the Bills. Granted, Amari Cooper was not having a good season. There was a lot of ups and downs. There was basically like 2 really outstanding games, if I'm not mistaken, and then the rest were like, oh, yeah. But he was more or less their number one receiver, right? And you made the move for Jerry Jeudy, right? This offseason, you did all this stuff, and then you trade away. This is what baffles me. Nick Chubb makes his return this week, right? I think you and I can agree that the Browns offense, at least from what we've seen either in other divisional games that we've kept our eyes on, or definitely against the Bengals, this Browns offense, whether it was with Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson, operates very, very well when Chubb is in there and they are able to utilize play action. Chubb is, he's an excellent runner. He's had almost, in his career against the Bengals, it's like he's put up a season's worth of like Pro Bowl type numbers against the Bengals in his career just against that team. So, he gets going, and then inevitably, as he gets going, they're able to utilize play action. And that's where Baker Mayfield had some of his best games in his career against Cincinnati, being able to chuck the ball downfield to Donovan Peoples-Jones or Odell Beckham when he was there. I almost said Odell Thurman, if you can believe that. But it's you know what I'm saying, right? So it seems to me that it's a very odd week to trade away Amari Cooper. Granted, the drops and some of the stuff that we've seen this week. Yeah, you're 1-5, but if you feel that Nick Chubb is going to have this big reverberating effect again on your team, this offense, its season, it seems weird to me that you would then trade away one of your better downfield players to help utilize the effectiveness of the play action, right?
So, full disclosure, we were going to have a guest on today, Brandon Little, who covers the Browns for A to Z Sports. He works with me. He does a great job of covering the Browns. And I asked him actually earlier this week about the timing of the Amari Cooper trade and how Amari Cooper, it was no secret that he and Deshaun Watson didn't get on the same page. He actually threw mighty shade at Deshaun Watson right after he got traded. And that kind of explained why, less than 50% of Cooper's targets actually were caught. The accuracy and the connection, it was just not there. And what Brandon told me was that it reminded him a lot of Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr., where, Baker was kind of forcing the ball to Odell in certain times, or where he wasn't seeing him when he probably should have. And obviously there was a beef between both of them in that offense back in the day. And then I think it was the week after where Odell got traded and the Browns offense kind of came back to life a little bit. And he said that there is some optimism that type of effect could happen here, where you don't have this tarnished relationship between a quarterback and the wide receiver one, that we're just never on the same page, and the offense maybe looks a little bit more cohesive with him out of the picture. And obviously with Cooper, it's a great benefit for him. He's with a better quarterback in an offense that absolutely needs a number one receiver in the Buffalo Bills. But I think the timing actually kind of works in the Browns' favor here, because now the Bengals, they're not really sure what type of passing offense they're going to be scouting against, because have Cedric Tillman inserted into the starting lineup at receiver. You still have Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy to kind of look out for. And obviously those guys aren't really built to be number one receivers. So there's not really a number one receiver in this offense per se. But like you were talking about when Donovan Peoples-Jones, ripping the Bengals to shreds, that the Browns offense hasn't really needed a number one receiver in years past when they've had a competent quarterback who can run the offense. The problem though, Anthony, is that they don't have a quarterback right now who can run the offense. And that's been the biggest problem. They don't have an NFL caliber offense with the current state of who Deshaun Watson is. And I don't know if 1 week later after trading Amari Cooper, that's magically going to change. But that seems to be like the number one variable here, is that Deshaun Watson is arguably, if not definitively, the worst starting quarterback in the league. And everything that happens after the snap, he just kind of, crumbles down and shrinks into a corn cob. So I don't know if, like this new look receiving group and this new dynamic with the receivers are going to do much of anything. But I did think it was interesting for Brandon to bring up a parallel between Baker and Odell and Deshaun and Amari Cooper in that sense.
Interesting. Yeah. Wish we would have been able, I think he was under the weather, so wish he would have been able to join us here. But I mean, you look at even in only two games played last year for Nick Chubb. First one was against the Bengals in week 1. And remember, the weather was terrible in that one. 18 carries, 106 yards, four catches, 21 yards. I mean, those types of numbers are pretty regular. I think, of all the games he's played against the Bengals, I think there may be 2 that I can think of that he did not have outstanding statistics. And I think at least one of those, the Bengals won. So, I mean, there's definitely a correlation there. Here's the deal. Obviously, it's Superman putting his cape back on this week for the Browns and Nick Chubb coming back. But I know we're not Browns guys, but what are the expectations here? Is it just, hey, we, especially now with Jerome Ford having some injury issues, is this heavy workload time for Nick Chubb, or do you suspect it's still going to be kind of easing him in a little bit? And if it's the latter, how effective can he be? Because, I mean, he's always been kind of the bell cow guy.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen this week in terms of him. I mean, he never really, only once or twice in recent years has he had over 20 carries against the Bengals. And typically it's never been like he gets 25 carries a game and they just completely ride him. It's really just been he doesn't really need that, because he can rip off explosive runs and he can kind of shorten drives in that regard. But all indications seem to be that it's going to be a handful of touches a quarter at most. So maybe he gets up to 15, but Nyheim Hines is going to come back, I believe, this week, and he's going to fit into that running back rotation. Even without Jerome Ford, they still have Donta Foreman, who's basically a league average running back. Pierre Strong Jr. is kind of their scat back version of a Chase Brown. So they have other names in the rotation that they can kind of lean on if the game script kind of goes in that way where they can run the ball. So I think they want to ease Nick Chubb in. I don't think they want to, give him 5 straight handoffs to start the game.
Yeah.
I definitely, none of us are going to put it past him if he breaks off a long one and he kind of reinvigorates the offense. And that's just something that the Bengals have to expect because this is Nick Chubb's first game back. You don't know how healthy he is, but you know that they're not going to, get him out there 100% of the time. So whenever he is out there, like, you have to be prepared for anything because his track record against the Bengals kind of speaks for itself. And obviously I don't want to be the guy that always correlates, rushing yards to wins, but the last time the Bengals beat the Browns in 2022, Nick Chubb had 34 carries or 34 yards on 14 carries. Obviously, they're doing something right to limit that. And just with how huge and critical he is in the past with this offense, making sure he doesn't have like an explosive day is obviously very important.
I would think because if you really look at what the Bengals defense was trying to do against Baltimore, the focus, hyper focus on Derrick Henry, right? Hyper focus on, not a ton of big plays from the legs of Lamar Jackson. Let's let his arm beat us, and kudos to Lamar Jackson. He did. So I would assume that a game plan is, you're not going to get us from Lou Anarumo. You're not going to get us by Nick Chubb. You're not going to get us by Deshaun Watson's legs. We're going to make Deshaun Watson try and pass because he's been struggling in that regard this year. And the wide receivers have also been struggling a little bit too. So I would only assume that would be the game plan this week. But I also assume that, Nick Chubb being back, even if it only is for, let's just say 15 total touches in this game, I can only be a positive for Cleveland and its offense. I mean, they just, even if he's not, full 100%, quote unquote, game shape, any of that kind of stuff, they just need something to balance them out. They need something to take some of the pressure off of Watson in terms of him being, kind of the do-it-all guy. And like I said before, I hate to sound like a broken record. This team is just different with Nick Chubb in the lineup, running the football and doing good things for them, because it's not just getting the running game going. He helps get the passing game going.
I mean, for Deshaun Watson's sake, and I don't, not trying to completely support him in this case, but for his sake, he better hope that the offense looks different, because I think a variable here is that the Browns have been away for the last 3 weeks now. And obviously Watson's game hasn't been any better. So this is going to be the first time in like a month that the Browns are going to take the field in front of their home fans with obviously, a not so good quarterback, and there's going to be boos, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on that offense to kind of step it up. And I think there's going to be a lot of hope that Nick Chubb's return can maybe spark something for that offense. And if it doesn't happen, man, it's going to be ugly for that side of the stadium. And it could just be like, if Nick Chubb is like doing his thing and he's not getting any support from his quarterback, who knows, man? We could see a quarterback switch in this game, because I don't think Deshaun Watson can keep this up and start 17 games. And if it's going to be this game against your in-state rival, say the Bengals have a lead and Watson's playing terrible and Chubb is doing all he can and it's still not enough, I don't know how long you can be, if you're Kevin Stefanski, listening to just the vitriol coming down at you and just the insurmountable pressure, and not be like, let's just see what Jameis Winston can do, because at some point it's got to happen if it doesn't get better for them.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Nick Chubb makes his return this week to the Cleveland Browns, of course, against his a team in which he's had a lot of success in the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to talk key matchups in just a second. Just want to remind everybody to go to the Believe in Cincy, BLEAV, Cincy podcast channel. Resubscribe to that. You could get a handful of different shows, including ours, the Orange and Black Insider, there. And if you like the live stream video of stuff that we do, you can get that through various Twitter accounts where we stream live, including that of Cincy Jungle and the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that. We've got an announcement for you at the end of the show too, which is pretty cool, and we're excited to share that with you. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. But before we do, John Sheeran, let's talk about what we do almost every week here, which is the key matchups and the path to a Bengals win. I think for me, one of the most obvious matchups, and it depends on how many snaps, because the Bengals player that will be going up against moves around quite a bit, but Mims versus Garrett, right? I think that's where you start. Or you could just say Brown and Mims versus Garrett, right? I mean, that's just where it starts. The Bengals offensive line has been performing pretty well this year. in terms of pass protection metrics and that sort of thing, but they struggled a little bit last week against a good Giants defensive pass rush. So they need to kind of clean some things up. Mims was in there on some issues, but I think, as you and I discussed on the aftermath earlier this week, John, I think yes, some of that was, a pass off of stunts and or Zach Moss potentially not being in the right spot to do a pickup of a rusher there. So, I mean, much like it's all attention on Chubb, it's all attention on Garrett this week. I know he's on the injury report, but I mean, I think he's going to be expected to play.
Yeah, I was listening to Jeff Lloyd talk about it and how Garrett's had this type of issue with his legs or his knee, and it's been like a thing, or it's his foot. It's been a thing since like he was a child, and it obviously he's such an uber athlete that he can just play through anything, and that's just the case now. But at a certain point, it's going to be the situation where does he need to have this like checked medically and like maybe sit out for a while. But right now he's chugging along, and like 80% of Myles Garrett is still better than, I don't know, 98% of anyone else at his job. And I think back to last year where like it was like a simple like Euro step swim move around Ted Karras like on the first drive of the game. Like this guy can win from anywhere, and no matter where the Bengals try to put attention towards him, like he's still going to be a problem, and he's still going to find his way into the backfield. It's a clash of titans, I would say, because Orlando Brown Jr. is still playing his best football of his career. He's leading the NFL, I believe, in ESPN's pass block win rate at 96%. And I think for that reason alone, it would benefit the Browns if they didn't put Myles Garrett against Orlando Brown Jr. Because again, if you have a guy who can win from both B gaps, who can line up on a heads up nose, and obviously can work against the right tackle, and that's where your better matchups are, then that would probably be where the Browns are going to go here. And I think Orlando Brown Jr. might get the day off in not to be disrespectful to like Agbo Okoronko or Zadarius Smith, wherever he does end up facing at the right defensive end. But if I were the Browns, I would try to move Myles Garrett around the line, like you said, and take advantage of Cordell Volson and try to see what Amarius Mims is built for, because this is one of the games where Amarius Mims was drafted for, to be able to take on the Myles Garretts of the world. And him being a rookie, obviously he's kind of thrown into the fire here, but it'll be a good litmus test to see, how he's continued to grow. And this is his, I think, going to be his fourth start and whatnot. And he's, even if when he faces a Darius Smith, like he's been having a decent year too. So this entire Browns pass rush can't be like, taking, it can't be like diminished, I would say. And I think after last week where they really did take care of Dexter Lawrence for most of the game, but they struggled against Brian Burns and Azeez Ojulari, it's going to be a similar situation where it's going to be a lot of attention on Myles Garrett, and they can't let the other guys who complement him win these one-on-one matchups as frequently.
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about Nick Chubb too in the Bengals defense. I mean, that's a pretty obvious one. I want to kind of focus a bit because this has been a little bit of a struggle in these games for the Bengals, and that is the Bengals receivers against this secondary. I forget who it was specifically. I should probably know this, but you said his name the other day, and his name's not coming to my mind, but it was physical guy that T. Higgins had some problems with.
Martin Emerson.
Emerson. Thank you. That's who it was. Yeah. That kind of encapsulates some of the stuff that happens in, Denzel Ward, the pick six a handful of years ago on the very first opening drive, and it just completely derailed that game. So these defensive backs are physical. They are not afraid to get up against, these great Bengals wideouts. And so what happens is either Garrett and others are supplying pressure, causing rush throws or different plays that maybe aren't the greatest throws from Joe Burrow, or, Burrow gets some time and, it's just the receivers are having tough sledding against these physical, able corners. So to me, Mr. I'm keeping my mouth shut this week, Jamar Chase and others. I mean, I think that's definitely an area, the Bengals receivers against this secondary. And the other element, the spin to that is, well, John, let's just say that continues and it's tough going for Jamar Chase, T. Higgins in terms of stats and putting up points. Who's going to step up beyond that? Is it Yoshi? Is it Eric All? Is it, what do they do at that point?
Yeah, I think it'll be a really good game or opportunity for the tight ends in this one, because Brown safeties, forgetting his first name, but
Delpit's in concussion. Yeah.
Yeah, but McLeod, I forget his first name, but he leads the Browns he leads the Browns in touchdowns with 2 out of everyone on the team. So he's been making plays, but they're banged up at safety. Juan Thornhill's also on the injury report. He's not expected to play. So it's a good opportunity, I think, to take advantage of the middle of the field, beyond the second level. But yeah, I think it's been a really good fit between Jim Schwartz's type of defense and the way that their cornerbacks like to play, like a lot of press man and get into your face. And that has been an issue specifically with T. Higgins, I think, in this matchup, and how he and Burrow just weren't on the same page last year, and he was kind of getting shut out for most of that game against Emerson. So it's a great opportunity for him to kind of keep building on the performances that he's had. And it's a good chance to move both him and Jamar Chase into the slot to kind of, free up some space for them, so they're not consistently on the boundary here. Like, obviously it's a good chance for, Yoshi in those situations to kind of take advantage of his matchup against Greg Newsome. But whenever you can get, more favorable situations and spots for your 2 best players that the offense runs through, that's what you need to do. And obviously running the ball not at Myles Garrett is a good strategy as well, just to take some pressure off of Burrow in the passing game in general. And it's going to be really fun to see how Eric Gall, as a lead blocker, can track down JOK, who's arguably one of the best linebackers in the game right now. He might be the best player overall in this defense. I mean, he might be better than Myles Garrett this season alone. And that's a testament to how, Garrett's been limited a little bit with his injury. But Owusu Koromoro is playing phenomenal ball at linebacker. He is just a heat-seeking missile from the second level. So Eric Gall has been really great at taking out blockers in space and, clearing lanes for Chase Brown and company, but he's going to have his hands full against JOK, and that'll be a fun matchup to watch for sure.
What do you think the Bengals do at safety this week? You see slight uptick of Jordan Battle snaps. I know Lou Anarumo really likes the headiness of Von Bell, but that isn't, Bell being back 2 years later is nowhere near the same as Bell and Bates together 2 years ago. It's just not clicking the same way. So I don't know. What do you, Chubb back? I mean, you probably want to have one or multiple guys in the box because of that. I mean, what do you foresee them doing this week? Is it more Battle? Is it more Bell because he is kind of more? I don't know. Both.
I think last week showed a good example of how you're up against a limited offense in the Giants, and there's not a lot of trust in that quarterback, and they're going to try to run the ball. And then Jordan Battle showed enough to come down into the box and make some tackles, and that's exactly what is going to be tasked of him and every other player on the Bengals defense this week. So I think it's a great opportunity to do something very similar to what you did last week, and maybe give Jordan Battle a little bit more than, I believe it was 14 snaps than he got last week. So continuing to just ease him in and ease Von Bell out of the game a little bit more often. And at this point, it is looking like a similar trajectory to last year, where Battle was slowly taking over a starting role for a veteran. In this case, it happens to be Von Bell. Last year, it was Nick Scott. But I think when you're facing an offense with similar strengths and weaknesses, and you're not too pressed to just drop back and coverage so often as a deep safety, it's a good opportunity for Battle to see more action in this game, because I think his skill set and what he did last week, he can build upon that against this offense.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely another player to watch. Anything else before we make some predictions and talk about some other things before we get out of here?
Again, like I mentioned that the Browns offensive line is not quite what it used to be, and I think it's a clear step down. But watching the run game against the Eagles, like, they were still able to get out into space, and I think like, they still major in zone blocking, and that's still fits the skill set of these guys. So it's not going to be an off day for the Bengals defensive line by any means. I think Bitonio is still kicking it. Like, Conklin is still a savvy vet in that regard, and if they get Posick back at center, that adds another level of athleticism. So you had a great week for the Bengals defensive line last week. You had a stable rotation of defensive tackles. Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson keep building as run defenders. Keep making sure that you're flowing with the play. You're showing color in both gaps, because the Browns running backs, they're really strong at this scheme where they have a lot of choices and they can read from outside to in. And if the Browns have a stable run game where it's consistently 4 or 5, 6 yards, and you're staying ahead of the chains, it's going to make life only easier for Deshaun Watson. So by no means is this an off week for the Bengals defensive line. They still have to get after it against this offensive line.
Yeah. All right. Well, how do you see this one playing out, John? The Bengals, depending on which outlet you ask, I think they're favored by 5.5 to 6 points at this point. What are you seeing? What are you feeling?
This game is always unpredictable. I feel like it's more unpredictable than any AFC North rivalry, and it's obviously there's the animosity, it's the in-state aspect of it. There's no bigger disparity on the schedule this week in terms of quarterback play. You have arguably the best quarterback in the game playing right now in Joe Burrow, and arguably the worst in Deshaun Watson, which is why the spread is like that. And I think as the week has gone on, I started off thinking like the Bengals should win this easily, and now I'm kind of leaning towards it'll probably be a one-score game just because of the randomness with it. The Nick Chubb impact and the factor and the variable with that is very unpredictable for me. And like you said, it could lead to more stability for the Browns offense. It could just reinvigorate that offense to maybe look somewhat competent. But I think all the progress that the Bengals defense showed last week gives me enough confidence that no matter how much quote unquote improved this Browns offense will look, it's very hard for me to see them getting like north of like 17, 20 points in this game. I think that would be a pretty solid outing for the Browns offense, all things considered, considering where they're at and everything. And I think there's a lot of pressure and a lot of motivation for the Bengals offense to kind of take a stand and have a decent game against this defense for once. And their offensive line is definitely built to absorb Myles Garrett for most of the game. He's going to get in there a couple times. And obviously they gave a lot of credit to Denzel Ward and Emerson and their secondary for what they do. But Jamar Chase and Teagans are playing really well right now. And I think this is still a matchup where they're going to get some wins when they need to. So not a lot of points in this game. I'm going to say, though, Bengals win 23-17.
Yeah, I'm with you. So you have them more or less cover, it sounds like. Yeah. I think it's going to be a tight one. I think it's going to be probably pretty ugly. I'm going to go like 20-16, I think. And I think the Bengals win. Look, here's the deal, John. I mean, at this point, if you're the Bengals, if you lose this game, a 2-5 record, whatever, I mean, that puts you at the bottom of the AFC North, tied with the Browns because they would have the head-to-head at that point. You're looking at 5 AFC losses, 5 conference losses, and 2 division losses. So while 2-5, and then you've got some winnable games in the Eagles and the Raiders coming up down the pike, and then you've got some other sprinkling. I know there's articles out there talking about the strength of schedule percentage for the Bengals go the rest of the way type of thing. I mean, that is it. 2-5 is already a hard enough hole to dig yourself out of, but an 0-5 conference record and an 0-2 division record, to me, I know a lot of people could say, well, they can still make up some ground. This is you got to have this one, and for that sake alone, not so much even the overall record. It's what the nuances of the overall record. If you were to lose this one, it's a lot to overcome.
100%. And there was pressure last week to make sure that you were able to just get one win, and now it's just about kind of building on that. And I think in terms of like their offense and their balance, like there's pressure on that too, because the run game has not been what it was in the beginning of the season. And how poetic would it be if the Bengals run game kind of went into Cleveland and did the same thing that Nick Chubb and company have always been able to kind of do to them? There's just a lot of opportunities to just switch around some narratives in this one and potentially just shake up the Browns even more than they're already shaken up right now. It's just they're very vulnerable, and the Bengals are in a much better position to kind of turn their season around, while the Browns are kind of looking towards the future, because at this point they don't really have anything else but that. And I'm not trying to discredit them. I'm not trying to look like a fool here if the Bengals lose in a couple of days, but that's just where they are. And at some point, you just need to kind of forget about the demons that have haunted you for the last 7 years going up here and just take care of business like the better team that you are. That's just all it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're due. That's for sure. And it would be nice. I mean, we talked about complimentary football all week and all that kind of stuff. It would be nice if they put together a semblance of that this week. Not necessarily fully, if they were able to fully do it, that'd be great. But just kind of taking those steps through these next few weeks and collecting wins to get, pushing that foot down on the pedal a little bit more and going forward. But we'll see what happens. And the Bengals go to Cleveland this Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern, And the latest chapter in the Battle of Ohio will commence. Bengals looking for their first win in Cleveland since 2017. So hopefully they can take care of business there. Let's drop the mic and get out of here. What do you have for us, John?
I think we have an announcement. I want to defer to you for that.
Okay. Yeah, we do have an announcement. A representative didn't tell me that we can't say anything. So at this point, I'm going to ask for forgiveness instead of permission, I guess. We have a special guest next. It was next Tuesday, right, John?
Mm-hmm.
Next Tuesday, there is a big event in Cincinnati, and I'm doing one last go through on my emails to make sure that there's no don't say anything, and there's not. So we will. There's a big event in Cincinnati happening with Sam Hubbard, and he is doing what is it? Campbell's Chunky, right? I think it's. So he's working with them and obviously doing a charitable event, and we are going to be pleased to have him on the show. We might try and get some representation from one of our respective organizations here at the actual event, but we will be slated to, at this point, interview Sam Hubbard on the show, which is going to be interesting. And hopefully he is talking about a second consecutive great defensive performance by the team and himself. So we are excited to be having him on next week. It'll be next Tuesday. We're working out the times and all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for that. I don't know how we're going to do that, John. I don't know if we're going to do Aftermath Monday and then maybe Sam on Tuesday, that sort of thing. But we'll be chatting with him, and we're excited for that. We've had the pleasure, you can see in our intro and outro video, we've had the pleasure of talking with him a couple of times. It's almost an annual tradition at this point. It's a lot of fun, but he's a great guy, great ambassador for the city, obviously local guy, and we're excited to have him on.
It's good timing too, because he's been dealing with a hamstring injury. Really, I think it affected his play early on, but I think as the defense has kind of started to slowly, come into form, so is he. He's getting more healthier by the week, and I think he's starting to look like the Sam Hubbard of old. But also, he's been with this team since 2018. He's an Ohio kid. He's a Cincinnati kid, and he's never gone up to Cleveland and won. So it'd be really cool if he were to come back down here.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
Good call. So kind of a dual drop the mic. I don't know if you've got something else extra, but a cool announcement. And we're excited about that.
Nothing I can say that can top that. I'll tell you that.
Well, happy birthday to your buddy Ben. How about that?
Yeah. Happy birthday, Ben.
We'll do another happy birthday to him. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in live. Thank you for listening after the fact. Go get this show on the Believe in Cincy, BLEAV, in Cincy podcast channel through your favorite audio streamer. You can also get it on our YouTube channel, etc. Go do that. We appreciate all of the support. We appreciate you tuning in live and after the fact. Like I said, John, have yourself a good weekend, and we will be back talking about hopefully a Bengals win to get them to 3-4 and creeping their way up in the division.
If it's brown, flush it down.